So, welcome back to the Sharon Fitzmaurice Podcast. And this is our third week in celebrating Irish abroad. And my guest today is David Ryan, originally from the west of Ireland and now living in Canada. David, you're very welcome.
Thank you, Sharon. How are you?
I'm great now, thank you, and delighted to have you. So, it was one of your greatest admirers that suggested that you come on the podcast, your wonderful
Yeah,
fiance. And I love
yeah.
that. She said she may be biased, but I think it's lovely, to share our stories because moving abroad, as they say in Ireland, is, it can be the adventure of a lifetime, but can also bring a lot of changes in people's lives. So if we look back to yourself, what was the thing that you wanted to explore by moving to Canada?
What I want to explore by moving to Canada, um, just opportunity really. Kind of what it all boiled down to. Um, the career and where I wanted to go with it wasn't really available to me in Ireland. Um, and I had struggled with, the company I was with and been a top performer in there and looking for progression. And I was always kind of shoved aside and told we'd talk about it next year. And, the years are ticking by and it was never being realistic and there was no reason for that. But so yeah, I just kind of I said, look, I had enough and wanted to see what else the world had to offer.
I love that because again, we hear that a lot of times in Ireland, isn't it? It's who you know, and you can be
Yeah,
kind of overlooked even though you're the top performing person. And I suppose, we hear that quite a lot in Ireland, which is something I think, a lot of companies should really listen to because we have so many of our amazing young people that are going abroad, which is lovely too, because it's great to get opportunities and experience in different places
yeah,
in the world and see what's outside of our own little small, beautiful country that we have. But we'll go
yes.
back again, David, to you and growing up in the west of Ireland. You grew up in a farming background.
I did, yeah. Yeah. My dad has been a full-time farmer all his life. So I grew up on a 250-acre farm in Mayo, just on the border of Galway. And yeah, kind of thought that might be, he told me from a very young age, never rely on the farm, always have your job and do this on the side. So it's kind of partly his fault.
Yeah.
This is partly his fault, but yeah, it wasn't my cup of tea really. I kind of realized, after a while and once I started my own journey on what I wanted to do with my life, kind of became more and more clear that that wasn't something that I didn't want to, that wasn't my vibe, and that I wanted to kind of go out and see what else was out there for me. So, but yeah, he's been over to visit us and he's seen what we've done and stuff. So he doesn't blame me. He fully understands for it, and he's delighted for it. It was a great upbringing though. Teaches you so much.
Mm.
Has really helped me in life. Just by the hard work, the community, the honest work. If you don't get up and do it, it's not going to be done type of mentality. Which is another big thing that I realized as soon as I moved to Canada, that mentality isn't something that's everybody has, and that mentality isn't something that every country has. And once I kind of, thought, didn't think much of it when I came here, just carried on as usual. But realized very soon then that the companies over here, um, kind of see that as that's a big deal, and you get promoted and you climb the ladder. Doesn't matter how long you're in the door. If you're doing all the right things, doesn't matter your age. They see that and they want to they want to lay out a path for you to do as well as you can. So I was like, okay, this is
Mm.
more like it. This is what it should be, rather than working yourself to the bone for a company and making no difference to your paycheck if you did the same amount of hours that was on your contract.
Mm.
But I think as Irish people we kind of do that as the way we approach a work day. Um, and yeah, it just has been very beneficial over here when they kind of see that as a big asset.
That's wonderful. It's a real learning and growth opportunity for you, David, as well, isn't it? Not
Oh,
just in your
absolutely. Yeah.
career, but as a
Yeah.
person as well, and to be
Yes.
recognized for the skills and talents that you have, that you've acquired just not even from your working life, but going back into your farming background and what you were taught by your father, that it
Exactly.
stands
Yeah.
to you. It was a great foundation for you.
Yeah. And I find it, I suppose, a lot to do as well with who, my parents that raised me and their personalities and how they do things. But I find you become very adaptable. So especially when in Ireland when I was working in a dealership there, a 60-year-old farmer from a rural background could come in looking at a BMW, and he'd be very wary of the young guys in the suits. But I could talk to him as if we were standing in a field looking at cattle, basically.
Mhm.
The same as I could talk to a guy coming down from Dublin looking for a big executive car and all business. It's I find it coming from that background. I find it very easy to switch back and over when you're brought up in that background, but you've kind of worked in a more corporate type of
Mm.
industry. It's a good thing to have because you can kind of adapt to all types of people. You're not kind of just set on your in the one level.
And I love that. And I think it's a really important kind of point to make is being able to adapt to your environment and your surroundings. And I suppose that's something you've had to do for as moving from Ireland to Canada. Now you had a kind of a shaky start, let's say that way. We put it nicely for you,
Yes.
David. But you were moving in March 2020, and tell everybody what happened then in March 2020, as if they don't know, but we'll just
And
remind
yeah,
them.
just everyone wants to be reminded. Yeah, so look, we were in the same boat as so many other people. I'd quit my job. We had flights booked. We moved out of our apartment in Galway, and we were staying with Shauna's parents for a couple of days before our flight. I had my job in Vancouver confirmed, all excited to get going, and then obviously the whole world shut down in March 2020, and borders are closed. There was no flights, and I was kind of like everybody else, like what is going on? We were in limbo, because we didn't really have a base. We were literally on the way out the door, type of thing. Um, and my dream job was waiting for me over here, and I was like, "Oh no, don't tell me this is going to go now, and they're not going to have the position for me and stuff." But in fairness to them, we spoke over phone and Zoom a couple of times, and they're like, "Look, your position is here. Whenever you get here, take your time." They were in a similar situation over here. They closed up shop for a couple of weeks, so it kind of put us at ease. But yeah, it used those. It was about 3 months then before we actually moved. It was June. Can't remember the day. I think June 16th or something. So I spent those 3 months. We lived in an Airbnb in Kong. For some reason, the weather had been beautiful for most of that time.
Mm.
We were enjoying the grounds of Ashford, and I was out on the farm every day helping Dad, just some bonding time. So in uh, in hindsight, it was a lovely 3 months. Now that we know that we managed to get here, but there was a lot of doubts at the time, as you can
Yeah,
imagine.
absolutely. And as you said, the whole world stopped and everybody was questioning what was
Yeah,
going to
yeah,
happen. But again, I suppose when you had planned that big move and the excitement and the job and everything, and it's
yes,
really like the universe is saying, hold on a second now, you're not going anywhere. But you
yeah.
did, and I love that you enjoyed that time, and you made the best of it. And especially as we all know, the weather was fabulous around that time, and everybody thought it was brilliant. And I suppose it continued then for lockdown and everything. But you got going and you moved over to Canada. And what was your first
Yeah.
experiences of it, David?
First experiences, not a lot to be honest, because we had to go straight into we had to plan our accommodation to isolate for 2 weeks and that. So we had booked an apartment, but it was on the 26th floor, maybe higher of an apartment block, looking out over the city. Couldn't leave it. Wouldn't be a fan of high rises. It was fine, but just didn't. It was you had a small little patio, and again there was a heat wave, or there was midsummer over here, so the heat was blistering through. But for those 2 weeks, yeah, we didn't really know. We were like, we know we're in a different country, but had no experience of it yet.
Mm.
because of that. But then obviously we got out and about then after the 2 weeks, and got to have a look around. So yeah, it was yeah, it was hard to say because there was so much going on. Kind of took a
Mm.
while for it to sink in.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just a strange time, isn't it? When you think
Yes.
back and you think, God, how did we all manage to get through that? And you being put up in a 26th floor of a high-rise building with a small patio, and you used to being out in the farm and in the wilds and the
Yeah,
freedom.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
very
And
different environment.
you're just looking down at the city, then trying to figure it all out. Kind of like, you're there, but you can't go down to get a
Yeah.
feel for it. So it's like, the unexpected. But yeah, it was
Mm.
definitely interesting.
Wow. And I know there was a few experiences for you that weren't very pleasant. And and I know, and I've spoken to Shauna, but I'd like you to
Yeah.
share it from your perspective as well.
Yes.
So can you tell me about all your belongings that you had?
Yeah. So that was just after the 2 weeks. Once we got out and about, we went looking for a place that we actually wanted to rent. We had an idea of the area and stuff. So we had a hired car, and yeah, we found a lovely apartment that we really liked, and we were supposed to move into it in, I don't know, a couple of days later. And that was the same day I was starting my job with my new employer. Um, and the fact that we were staying on the 26th floor, and there was only one of the elevators working. And then of course there was a limitation on the amount of people that could be in them. So it used to take like 30, 40 minutes to go from the lobby up or vice versa. So I said to myself, I don't want to be under pressure in the morning because I needed to drop Sean off at the apartment, unpack all the luggage so she could go, taking everything out of the suitcases for the day. And I was heading to work for my first day. So I was like, you know what? Now we'll put most of the suitcases down in the car tonight, and when it's quiet, and then in the morning we can we have our clothes here ready, and we can just go straight down and straight off. Yeah, naive, not realizing you're living in a massive city, not in the west of Ireland. So I went down the next morning, and everything out of the car had been stolen. All our suitcases that we brought with us from Ireland had all been taken. So that was a bit of a kick. It was only about an hour later than I remembered that I had my late mother's engagement ring hidden in a pair of socks that I planned on proposing to Shauna with. So that was another kick. But yeah, it was a unusual start. It was like, okay, what's this telling us? But we got on with it. We had to go on a shopping spree, and because I had suits and work clothes and all the other clothes you obviously bring and all your belongings. But yeah, we got past that section though. We said, okay, we're still alive. Keep going. We'll figure it out.
Do you think that another person might just have went, especially with lockdown happening, being put up on the 26th floor, and then all of their belongings and your late mother's engagement ring being taken? Do you think another person had just went, feck this? This is just too much, I'm going back home.
Yeah, well, I don't, maybe, but at that stage, you're already there. It's already happened. There's no point going back home with your tail between your legs and less stuff than you had when you left. So
Absolutely.
no, we don't really think that way. We kind of
Yeah,
we stick to the plan.
brilliant.
Stick
I
to
love
the plan,
that.
yeah.
And it's amazing too, that a lot of people would say, if one bad thing happens like that, that they kind of give up. And I think again, maybe it is the Irish in us that we're quite determined, because we've had things
It'd be
happen to us.
grand.
We'll be
Yeah.
grand, sure we'll get on with
Yeah.
it. But having your late mother's engagement ring stolen, in a new country, that must have really been hard as well, though, especially when you wanted to propose to Shauna with it.
Yeah, it was. It was a known street where a lot of hundreds and hundreds of homeless, and they have little stalls and stuff for sale. So kind of scoured down through that a couple of days a week, trying to find some of the stuff. Um, yeah, befriended a homeless guy and was paying him to do a bit of investigation, all this sort of hilarious things. But turns out because the engagement ring was part of a set of earrings, so I got my sister to sing. There was only one earring left, So I got my sister to send me over the earring because I thought, you know what, I'll get this manufactured because the same style. I get this manufactured and change it to an engagement ring. So I brought her to a jeweler and he had a look at it and he was like, it's about $50 worth of he's like, it's not real diamonds
Mm.
and it's and I was thinking to myself, oh yeah, sure. Where was I after thinking that, 'cause I know growing up, we were never a material house, and I was like, where was I after thinking that the engagement ring was going to be worth a couple of thousand? It was only worth,
Yeah.
it would have been worth $100 or whatever. So I was like, okay, well, that's not so bad. So what I ended up just doing was getting a proper one, a replica made from scratch, just copy the design and did all real diamonds and stuff. So it worked out grand in the end because Shauna has a proper engagement ring on her hand now, not a
Well,
but so we kept the theme and kept the thought,
and
just
that's
replaced it with
lovely.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, because it is the sentimental value, but finding that, and I love that, when you're a child, you think that the jewelry in your
yeah,
mother's jewelry box is worth a fortune. And as you said, it could be something that, it's the sentimental value, of course. Now
correct,
we
yeah,
know absolutely. Yeah. Well, I'm glad that
correct,
worked out for both of you as well. And
yeah,
the romantic in you, David, wanting to
yes, yes,
replicate it.
yes,
I love this. I
absolutely, yeah.
absolutely love it. So you're going then and you're working for a big, we'll call it a supercar. I'm not sure if you want to name what kind of a supercar company it
Oh
was you were
yeah,
working for.
I still have one of them on my wall there as a target as a goal. Yeah, I was with Lamborghini Vancouver for started was with them for 3.5 years in total, but yeah, just started that the day after the whole
Mm,
robbery.
wow. I mean, it's just thrown straight into it, isn't it, David? And
Yeah,
just got,
yeah, they were
here you
very
go.
they got yeah because I called them that day and I told them what happened and they were very very apologetic to hear our experience of our first week or so in Vancouver. But yeah, no, very understanding. The owners at the time, it was a small family run business at the time, and they were very understanding, very nice people. So
That's
there was
good.
no
I'm
problem there.
glad. So you're
Mm.
working for this supercar. Was it a dream of yours? I see you because you have the poster in the back. Was it a
Yeah.
dream job for
Oh,
you to be working?
absolutely. I was car crazy, and I was with BMW in Ireland for 4 years. And after that, there isn't a whole pile. There isn't a whole much more you can go to in the car
Mm.
industry, unless there's a Porsche dealership in Dublin, but I had no interest in living in Dublin. So yeah, I wanted to get into the supercars, and Lamborghini was top of the pops for me, and it worked out perfect. Confirmed the job with them before I got there, over the phone. So it was all another part of the reason why we weren't too we weren't too to jump on. You were saying about heading home after the
Mm.
experience. Like, no, it's fine. We'll make it all back. We have everything else is in place, and the dream job is there. So
Yeah, and you have
with
to look at
the
the balance of it, don't you, really, and the
yeah,
positives in it.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, exactly,
ve-
exactly.
very good, David. So you're working for Lamborghini, which is a supercar company, dream job. And how did you find it compared to the job when you were back home in BMW? Was it very different, or was the sales tactics different? Were the customers different? What did you kind of learn about yourself in those few years with them?
What did I learn about myself? So a couple of things. Was it different? Yes. Was it different? No. Very like I kind of went into it, because obviously with a brand like that, you have this, notion in your head of it's completely different, and oh, I'm going to have to learn so much, and I wonder because with BMW there was a lot of training involved, and there was always accreditations, and there was always, they had a particular, format for how salesmen should approach people and all this sort of stuff. So I was like, oh, I'm going to have to learn all this because it's going to be completely different because you're dealing with cars worth, 500,000 to 1 million and, really high net worth people. So I didn't know going in. I was like, okay, I just going to have to do all the courses and figure it all out. And but when I got in there, it was kind of like, left to my own devices, and I was learning obviously about the product and asking questions to one of my colleagues that was there for 7 or 8 years at this stage. And I was like, is there what do I have to learn regarding the sales process here? And he was like, David, you're obviously hired for this position because you've done very well in sales. So whatever you do normally, just do it here. And I was like, oh, okay, right, fair enough. But the only, I suppose, adjustment, there is obviously adjustments you make, but the big difference was, whereas with BMW was very much about, once the customer's in the door, you try and get the deal done there and then.
Mm.
Whatever you have to do with discount and trade in values and, you know, giving more for trade in and all this sort of stuff. You try and see what the point is that they get to commit to buy the car there and then. Whereas with this product is it was completely different. There was no discounts. So the car, yeah, the price is the price. And the thing is, they only have a certain amount of vehicles available per year.
Mm.
And once they're sold out, they're sold out. So it was a very different approach that way. Whereas, like, there's nothing you can do or say to a guy that's in the showroom to say, hey, if I do this, will you buy it now? So you're basically you're just building up a relationship with people and educating them on the product and looking after them as best you can and answering all their questions and staying in touch. And it's a far more drawn out process too. Whereas with BMW, you'd often have people walk in and buy a car on the same day.
Mm.
Whereas this, those people I made contact with 3 years later before they actually purchased a car off me.
Mm.
No, not always that long, but it can be. Some people are coming in, they've set up a business, it's going very well, and they know in the next couple of years it's going to be, they might sell it and stuff, and then they kind of start to come in to get a feel for what the different cars are like, with the different manufacturers, what the vibe is in the dealership, who they gel with, that kind of stuff. So very much a relationship focused industry,
Mm.
on how you get on with people and how you treat them, which results in how well and how many cars you would sell because a lot of them will go based off the person they're dealing with. Obviously, if they're not going to buy a car they hate, but
Mm.
you're not going to hate these cars either. It's just your
No.
preference of which
I'd say
of which.
anyone that excuse me, that comes in to have a look, they kind of know they've been building up to buying this car maybe for a long time, or maybe like
Yes,
you, it's a dream for them to
yeah,
have this car in their life, but to really think about the investment. So the relationship side of dealing with whoever you like you, David, is meeting that person and trusting them and building on which would be the right car for them because it is a huge investment. It's
yeah,
massive.
massive, and it's also what I often would or what I'd always would do was you kind of just find out, talk to the person and find out what they've done and how did they get to the position they're in, and you learn their story, and it's very inspiring too because it makes you want to push and push and push. But there is I won't mention any brands or anything, but there are certain dealerships in at that level that would be very much, you know, look down their nose at everybody, regardless if you have money or not, until you prove that you have the money. Then they'll take you seriously. So a lot of people come in with that perception that, you see them walking in and they'll be very cold to you straight away. And then once they realize that you're just a normal person trying to help, they open up and then you find out a bit more about them and like, kind of and some people it's just another car, they don't care. But other people it's a step in their life that they're kind of like, oh wow, I can't believe I'm here. And like
Yeah.
celebrating that and recognizing it was, is a big thing for me. Well, I know if I was on the other side of things, it would be a huge moment in my life.
Mm,
So
I love that.
once you're on that journey with them, you build. That's where the kind of the relationship and all that kind of stuff takes place, and you get to know people very well, and you get to share their excitement and you know just make it is a big deal and it is a big moment in life. And again, some people couldn't care less, just get the car ready, whatever, and that's fine. you you
Mm,
know you deal with those people too, but I always
mm.
liked learning about the people that have made something of themselves, how they did it, and really celebrate that with them when they got to this stage.
I love that, yeah. And as they said, they inspired you as well,
Yes,
because again,
absolutely.
that when you hear their stories, you're like, well, this is possible for me in my life, and for others, which I love that, and that's why I said, anybody, when you're looking at it, some people say, oh, well, I'll never have that. Instead of someone, well, maybe someday I
Yeah,
could have that as well,
yeah.
And I love that when you're building the relationship, you're learning from those people as well, your customers, aren't you?
Yeah,
And you
yeah,
know what you can do to help them along the way, or another customer that comes in. You know, I think the sharing of stories, obviously the podcast, David, with me, the sharing of stories is hugely important to people,
yes, yeah,
isn't it?
yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
it makes you realize that it all is possible, and it's not like, another thing I didn't, I never said it, and I never thought that way, is looking at a life that would be your dream life, and saying it, oh, when I win the lotto. No, I don't agree with that being the goal. Hence why we're doing what we're doing, is kind of like, I'm meeting these people, is it is possible. You
Yeah.
just have to, you have to kind of take, approach it full on, um, and meeting all those individuals and seeing that they've done it, and kind of seeing how they did it, and that they're not, they're nothing, they are very, very successful people, obviously, and they are, but they're not superhumans, if you get me.
No,
They've
they're just
just
like you
they've
and me.
correct. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
And
love
again,
that.
it depends, obviously there's ways of approaching life that, and different people's level of success as well. It all depends on the person and what they see,
Mm.
um as that level of success. But just, yeah, talking to them, meeting them, realizing that they're real people, and it just makes you, it's like, okay, this is all worthwhile. Keep going.
Mm. Love that. Really good. Love that story. That's um one of my favorite things is to hear people when they're inspired by other people. But you're being yourself, David, and you're treating them like you would everybody else. As you said, from the farmer that came into the field to the guy
Yeah.
that is the
Yeah.
multimillionaire, you're able to work with them because at the end of the day, they're just people behind the stories, but their stories can be very inspirational. And
Correct.
I think
Yeah.
we're always going to learn from people if we listen and we learn about them because we're learning
Exactly.
about ourselves along the way. Now we're sticking with the company and you're driving one of these very fabulous cars, David. I mean,
Yeah.
looking at it is fabulous. Driving it must be amazing. And what happens?
So yeah, so the first week or two, they get you set up with the insurance with the company, and then the thing is, you're new here, you need to get out and drive the cars, and experience them, and because obviously you have to know what you're selling. You can't just tell somebody, "Oh, this thing's amazing. Have you ever driven one?" No, then they're like, "Well, what are you talking about?" So that's the beautiful part of the job, is testing out the products. So I did all that in the first couple of weeks, and was getting to grips with the company and the people, and learning more about the product and how things worked over here. And we were 3 months in, and over here they do a lot of events for these type of clients. So it's a city, there's full of supercars, full of wealth. So every year there's different types of events. So this one was called the Diamond Rally, which was basically a charity event. You'd often see it in Ireland. They do something similar. They do the Cannonball Run, which is like, again, it's all these cars. Money goes to charity. They drive around, all the stickers on them and stuff like that. So this was happening on a long weekend, and obviously our our dealership was taking part in it because it's a great way to meet people and advertising and all that stuff. So it was the first weekend where I got a Lamborghini for myself for the whole weekend, driving off up to Whistler, staying in a five-star hotel. Shauna with me, out wining and dining clients, and I was like, "Oh wow, this is a big one. This is a big step." So very, very excited. Took the car home the Friday night back to our apartment, and parked it in our underground, and couldn't wait for the next morning. All met in downtown. This is a big organization, big event. There's cops everywhere. Streets are closed off. There's people around taking photos, kids everywhere, advertising, all that sort of stuff, media. And the idea is basically it's a convoy of supercars. They all drive the Sea to Sky Highway, it's called. It's about an hour and 40-minute drive up to Whistler. And then there was a drag strip that we're all heading to do a bit of racing, and then all head back to the hotel. Then there's like a big function that evening, stuff like that. So yeah, very excited. And Shauna was with me, obviously, and we met in downtown. And our company was the head of the convoy leaving the city. And I was remember turning to Shauna, I was like, is this real? Like,
Yeah.
are we here in a 350 grand, supercar heading off for the weekend? Um, but yeah, I was making sure I was very cautious because I was like, I want to be, I might look a bit dull behind the wheel, but I don't care. There's a lot of responsibility here. There's a lot of money involved. I was like, Shauna, you take my phone for the day. I'm not going to be anywhere near it. You take some videos and pictures, and call for getting some publicity and that on Instagram. So we headed off, and then about halfway there, there's a little place called Squamish. So we pulled off. We wanted to get a tea or a coffee. Um, and we turned off and kind of split up from the convoy. Even when you're out in the open road, it gets split up a little bit. So we pulled in, and then again we left after about 10 or 15 minutes. And about 15 minutes up the road, at this stage we were on our own, not on our own, like there was other cars, but nothing to do with the convoy, just general public, long weekend, heading off camping and whatever they were doing. And it was congested traffic on a 2-lane road, beautiful scenic drive. I was driving, you know, I was I saw later on in a CCTV or a dash cam that I was kind of holding up traffic a bit, if anything.
In your
But
supercar.
in my supercar, yeah. But I was like, I don't care. I'm not going to be getting a bad name with work or whatever it was. And we were getting close to where we were supposed to be heading for. And I said to Shauna, would you check on the maps to see how close we are, to get the address up? And literally, as I said that, I just noticed a black vehicle because we're obviously the other side of the road, and the fast lane is the left lane, and the slow lane is the right lane. I was in the fast lane. This vehicle just came up our right hand side and smashed the front right corner of our car, at 95, 100 kilometers an hour, and instantly put the car sideways. And then this part of the road was where there was, a concrete division or a concrete median just started. So at the mouth of it was those massive bins full of sand, to take the impact of vehicles. So we were going sideways into that. Like, this was all happening within seconds. There was no opportunity to react. It was just bang, and we were into the sand. But I remember, looking at Shauna and her looking at me, screaming like, "What the fuck?" Like, David, like. And to be honest with you, I thought she was going to die, just by what I could see coming towards us. So anyways, we hit the barrels and kind of braced, and I was like, I wonder, do you feel the moment it's all over? Like, do you notice it happen, or is it just that's it, nothing more? Um, and we just braced, and 10 seconds later, we were stopped and we were alive. And what had happened was we'd hit the barrels, gone through them, gone over the concrete division, gone into oncoming traffic, and we were hit head on the other way again by a family in a Toyota Corolla, and we were sent back up the road. But the guy that rammed us up the road, kept going. So, we checked to see we were both alive, and Shauna's side was destroyed, couldn't get out, so we had to climb up my side. And the first thing happened when we got out of the car was people just screaming at me. Um, Obviously blaming the young guy with the
The
blonde
fast car.
and the blonde fiance in the fast car, and nobody else on scene. No other car bar the Corolla that was coming the other way, to blame. So yeah, side of the road, people screaming at me, blaming me for what happened, and I was kind of like, what? First off, is this a dream? It has to be a dream. There's no way that I'm after being in a massive accident in one of these cars the first time I've had, um, and second off, where's the guy that did this? Why isn't he here? Why did anybody see this? Asking people, did you see what happened? And everyone was like, no. So I was like, oh, wow, okay. But yeah, so that was fun. That was another another big test.
Mm.
Um, so what happened from there was the family in the car coming the opposite way. Two kids were critical. They had to be airlifted to the hospital. Shauna broke her wrist. Her back was sore. She was stretchered off into an ambulance. Um, then when I went back to the car to check to see if there was any of her stuff left in it while she was in the ambulance. And then these two guys got into a fight with me, just like, nice driving, buddy. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Next thing we were going head to head in the middle of the road. And I was like, what is the world?
Mm.
So the ambulance driver split that up, and we brought off the ambulance, or brought off to the hospital. And then when I was in the hospital, the cops came in and detained me. And I was just like, oh, what is going on?
Mm.
So Shauna was getting x-rayed, and she was like, what, when are you back? And I'm like, I don't know if I'm coming back. Like, if I
God.
can't prove my story, I might be, and then
Mm.
my head went crazy thinking, if those kids don't survive and no one can prove what actually happened, it
Mm.
could be done for manslaughter. I'll definitely have to leave the country. All these things, my career's over, and just spiraling. So I brought up a question in the cop. He was actually very nice, in fairness, and I was explaining to him what happened. And he, he was like, "I'll drop you back now again to the hospital." So I was like, "Okay, great." He's like, "You're not under arrest. We just had to question you." And on the car on the way back, I said to him, "Did you see? Can you please tell me that you saw or you know of what I'm talking about?" And I always thought that the car that hit me was a big pickup truck because I could see one in my rear view mirror, and I presumed he just came around and smashed me. But the only thing the cop said to me was, "Are you sure it was a pickup truck?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "It wasn't any other vehicle." And I was like, "No." I was like, "Why?" And he was like, "Oh, no reason." But there was a reason for it. So the next day went on my phone, obviously, and there was news articles. I was all over the news, and I was getting online abuse and direct messages on Instagram and threatened and all this sort of stuff. Because everyone's an expert, obviously, when something
Mm.
like this happens. But I did notice an article saying that they found a Range Rover uh, from the accident, and then I was like, "What?" So I rang him and I said, "What's the story of this Range Rover?" And he was like, "Yeah, look, I can confirm we found the guy that just rammed you off the road." And he said it was a Range Rover, and I was like, "That's what you were talking about yesterday when
Mm.
you were asking me." So that was just a massive, massive weight off. Like that was,
Mm.
yeah, that was hard to describe how much that meant that they actually believed me and that I
Mm.
wasn't, that I wasn't going the other way. So yeah, um, it wasn't until December though that they actually came out with a statement to say that they had charged the guy for what he did. Turned out they had loads of dash cam videos and loads of witnesses that came forward, but on the day there was nobody there to say any of that. So I had to kind of suffer it out for a couple of months, um, until it came out in the media that it wasn't my fault, and that I was, and to be fair, work were even that day I rang them and explained what happened. They said, "If that's what happened, David, you're nothing to worry about." But I'm sure they had their questions over this new Irish guy that only started 3 months ago and was in the middle of this massive event because the road closed down for 7 or 8 hours. Nobody could buy those tailbacks for miles and miles. It was on the news. It was, yeah, it was everywhere. Um, so yeah, they released the statement in December, and kind of I was like, okay, let's move on with our lives. It's out in the open. The people that want to know now know. Some people don't want to know. They'll just, you know, they jumped on the bandwagon at the time and they've
Mm.
forgotten about it again since. But yeah, so that was another hurdle to overcome. Got more interesting than the fact that we found out the guy that rammed us off the road was a known gang member, and that was kind of like, what was it all about, and why us, and
Mm.
how did he choose, because he intentionally rammed us off the road. Like, how did he, why, out of all the people that have been over here for the last 30 years driving these cars every week up and down this road, how was I the one that was singled out? But yeah, it turned out he was shot dead not so long after that in a gang shooting found in a car park. So that was the type of guy we were dealing with. So another kind of like, what, what is what have we gotten ourselves in for? So
It's a
yeah,
far
kind of,
cry from the farming in the
yes,
west of
yeah,
Ireland. And again, I think when we move into bigger cities, we're going to experience more, David, and I
yeah,
think sometimes we're
yeah.
sheltered, aren't we, in our little country villages in Ireland or little small towns. And even our cities are small compared to a lot of cities in Canada or America or Australia. So we're going to experience more and there's going to be a lot going on. How did you cope though, David? Not just surviving the accident, but again with the fear of, well, what if they never catch this guy or this family don't survive or, I'm getting this online bullying and, it's in the news. How did you cope with it just day to day?
Um, I suppose the hardest part was that evening, because my boss said to me, "Look, don't go home. Come to the hotel, use the facilities for the weekend. Don't be on your own. You guys need to, you need some distractions." Um, and I'd only just joined Instagram because work asked me to. I hadn't been, I deleted Facebook even. I wasn't on social media. And then we were getting the taxi from the hospital back to the hotel or to the hotel. It was like, and the road was still shut down, so it took hours. And it was only then when I finally picked up my phone and had a look, and I saw all these messages coming through, and getting tagged, and I was just like, it was a real kind of like culture shock, I would say for sure. Is the fact that I wasn't on social media only 2 months prior, and the fact that it's a whole different level because you're involved with this type of car, which has a particular type of following, which is very public, and like stuff like that goes viral. And then people figure it out, because it's easy enough to figure out who's driving these cars. If especially if you're working in the dealership, they can find your page. So they were leaking my page, and there was screenshots going around and stuff like that. So Shauna stepped in, she just took my phone. She's like, "Give it to me. Just don't look. I'm going to block everything." And so that was a big thing. Um, but it was the next day, once I read that article and rang the cop to say, "What is going on here? I've read this." And he told me that they found the guy and that they know what happened. That's when I was like, okay, my conscience is now clear.
Mm,
I know that I've done nothing wrong. I know that it wasn't my fault, and I know that the truth is going to come out. So I just have to stay positive and stay focused on, yeah, it was absolute chaos. But I know that it was nothing. It was nothing. No, I couldn't have done anything, and I didn't do anything to cause it. And whatever may be with the family and stuff like that, touch wood, they all recovered and stuff, but that wasn't on me. Any of that was like, I was as much a victim as anybody. So once I got that confirmation from the cop, it was just, yeah, it was like getting the all clear from something something
yeah.
you don't want to have.
Mm,
um Now obviously it wasn't just, oh, everything's great again. There was a lot of PTSD. We went back. My boss told me not to come into the dealership that following week, to work from home, because he didn't know if media were going to show up my at the
mm,
at the at the dealership, stuff like that. Didn't know if the guy was going to come in, the guy that caused it. So I went in it was a long weekend. I went in the Tuesday just to get my diary. Um, and I remember crossing the road, walking up just kind of like a little alleyway that brings me up to the back where the dealership was. Um, and next thing, this cop just came up or this cop car came up the road on the wrong side, heading directly for me. And then I looked in the alleyway, and there was another cop car sitting there, and I was like, "Oh, these are coming from me. These
mm.
are, that's for me. I'm going to be arrested now. We're in the area that I work." I was like, "How embarrassing!" And they just went right by me and went in the alleyway, and there was obviously some sort of scenario going on, and I was kind of like, "Oh." Like,
Yeah.
the heart rate
Mm,
was going 90. But funny enough, the weekend of the event, we had organized this, what's called, it was a test drive event. So we had rented this massive mansion up in Whistler, and we were doing test drives in the car. And a guy I had been talking to was adamant to deal with me, and that he wanted to talk to me because I've been talking back and over with him. So I actually had to go back out on a test drive that weekend in one of the cars, which maybe, probably a good thing.
mm.
Falling off the horse and all that.
Yeah.
So I still went to work. Uh, it was a Sunday morning. The thing happened the Friday, and this was the Sunday morning. Then I went off out and went. He was driving, but yeah, I went off out for half an hour in one of the cars out around the mountains and stuff. And I was kind of like, mm. But
Mm.
yeah, just got up and kept going to work. Was determined not let that define me. Um, clear conscious, knowing that I didn't do anything wrong, and yeah, got through it
Perfect.
gradually.
Yeah. Yeah, you make it sound like, you were thrown off the horse, got back on him and sailed away into the sunset. But as you said, it's gradual process and it's building
Yeah,
yourself up after that as well. Because even if it was just a car accident, just bumping into a wall, there is an amount of shock and trauma,
yes,
just
yeah,
in the shock itself. But with everything that went on for you, David, I mean, you could write movies really about the
yes,
story.
absolutely, yeah, absolutely,
And I
yeah.
don't mean to
It's
smile, but I'm smiling now because if people hear that all in one go, it is like something that you would see in a movie, isn't it?
yeah. First 6 months of Canada, all that
Yeah,
you'd be kind of like, you're taking the piss.
yeah.
That couldn't really happen. But it's yeah, it all changed. Like the December, then the cops released the statement, and I kind of used that as the okay. No, we're not dwelling on it. We're not sitting around moping. We have a lot to achieve over here. So we got engaged at Christmas and then looked at the new year as a new slate, and like everything just took off from there. I was well established at work at that stage, and everything that I was doing up to that point all started to pay off. And yeah, we just got on with life and you know started thriving, and yeah, just we're not we didn't come this far to just come this far type of thing.
Yeah, I love that, and I love that attitude as well. It's that, and I interviewed a girl last week, and she never did stand-up comedy before, and she
Mm,
moved to America, and she said, "Sure, I'll try it. Sure, what harm? Sure, I don't
yeah,
know anybody. They don't know me," and I just love that attitude. Try it. You know,
yeah,
just try
exactly, yeah,
it. Try something. You're not always going to succeed, but just keep trying. That's what
yeah,
life is for. And I love that with all of the knocks that you had, and some of them were very physical knocks, that you said, okay, we're not going to let that define us and who we are. And we came here for a reason and we want to
correct.
make it work. And I love that you stuck to that and remembered it. Because again, if we look at people just in day-to-day lives, they let so many things knock them off course or
Yeah,
off focus or where they want to go in their lives, and they let that define them. And then that becomes the story that they tell. Your
yes,
story in telling it is showing that even though you and Shauna had so many things happen within those months, that you still decided we're just going to keep going and, planning for our future and not
yeah.
let everything dwell back in the past. I think that's amazing, David. You're both an inspiration.
Thank you.
So I want to get to where you are now because you're now a mortgage broker.
Yep.
So tell us about where the move came from the supercars into the mortgage broker.
So it was introduced to me very early on, actually, in the process. My first 7 or 8 months, I sold a Lamborghini to a mortgage broker. Um, a very successful guy who put an inquiry in on a car, and was chatting back and over with him, and he was asking questions, etc. And I was like, when can you come in? When can you come in? And he's like, oh, I'm too busy and I don't know, whatever. So I was like, okay, I will. He was like, he lived like an hour outside the city. I said, I will be there tonight outside your office with the car. And I brought it and placed it in front of him. And he drove it in his local area, and it became real for him. And then the next week he owned it. He'd forked out $500,000, and he kind of said to me, I wasn't expecting on any of this to happen. And I was like, well, that's how it goes. You get the feel for the car, and you get the excitement, and you get to see what it really would feel like. And he was like, yeah, I know, but he's like, Dave, please come work for me. He's like, it's very hard to find people with your kind of approach on,
Mm.
using your head and getting out there and, just whatever. And I said, what do you do? And he's mortgages. I was like, mortgages. I said, I'm a car guy. I said, this is what I love. I said, I love doing this. And I was like, he was like, what would you love to do? And I was like, I'd love to have my own dealership, someday. And he was like, okay. He said, keep in mind though, the mortgages. And I was like, no, but I said, I'd have to go in and pretend like I care. And he was like, yeah. But he said, you can sell supercars all your life. Or he said, you can work for me. And he said, you could possibly buy one in a couple of years. And I was like, yeah, sure. But anyways, we got on very well and met up with him, every sort of year at an event or whatever. And every time I met with him, conversation came up, Dave, please come work for me. And I'd always tell him the same thing. No, not an ocean. No interest. No interest. Not my thing. This is my thing. But it had kind of inserted in my head when the day he came in to give me a deposit on the car. I tell the story a lot. A lot of people, if they hear it, they'll say, oh, he's repeating himself again. But he came in to pay the deposit on the car while I was doing a delivery with another family. And he was outside just walking around it and stuff. And the family that was picking up their current car said to me, is that a scene? And I said, yeah. And I was like, do you know him? They're like, yeah. Did he just buy that event store? And I was like, yeah. Just gave me a deposit there last night or this morning. And they're like, wow. And I was like, why? And they're like, he was driving a dump truck for us like 6 years ago. He was a dump truck driver. And I was like, that kind of was a little insert.
Ding
Like
ding.
I was like, okay, this is okay. I'm still not running out the door to go working for him, but I was like, that's impressive. And he's not one of these guys that's, you see the guys on Instagram that are in the gym for 4 hours a day and up at the crack of dawn and, only eat salad and they're just, he's a normal person. He likes a few drinks and, he's just same as you or me. But he got into an industry that if you work hard at it, these things are possible. So I kept that in mind and I still had my own notions of what I wanted to do. And I thought I would spend longer in Lamborghini, to be honest, but just things had changed slightly. It was under new ownership and the structure changed a little bit and we moved, we bought our house in on a little island off the coast of Vancouver. So I was commuting, I had to get a ferry and every day it was doable, but I was gone 12 hours a day. So it wasn't ideal, whereas I was literally a 7-minute walk away from where I was working at before that. So it kind of had started to change to more so of just a job rather than I would have done it for free for first 2 years nearly type of thing. And yeah, once that kind of started to happen, I just kind of, long story short, I was like, it's time to move on before it turns bitter or anything that type of stuff. So I left, built up a lot of amazing relationships with a lot of clients and et cetera. And then after I left, I took a month or so off, thought I'd stay in the industry, and then had a lot of old clients approach me with options and opportunities to either run a dealership for them or kind of open up a dealership together or kind of run their dealership, stuff like that. And I briefly did take another position. Well, I'm still kind of loosely associated, but with another guy that was what we call wholesale, which is basically not retail. You're kind of doing it on the back, feeling it. And this idea was still in my head, and I talked about it with a good few times with different friends and stuff. And I was telling them, about what he had told me and what he did and stuff. And they were like, probably a bit silly not to really consider that fact that you can also work remotely, which meant that I could spend more time on our island and I could spend more time with Shauna and, whatever we wanted to do with our life, if we wanted to have a family or whatever it may be, that these were, this was all possible. Even like the fact that we could go abroad on holiday somewhere, take our laptops with us and work rather than having to be physically present at a dealership 5 days a week and you take your holidays based on the amount of days you have off type of thing. So that was all a big factor. So yeah, I rang him and I said, look, talk to me. So let's have a sit down and explain to me what the whole thing looks like and what's involved. And went and met with him, and he explained the industry and how it works, and you have to go and get your degree and get your mortgage license and stuff. So yeah, he said you do have to do a course, and I was like, oh, I quit college and got into sales so that I never have to study, because it's not my thing. And I was like, oh, but anyways, got through it. It's different when you study at the age of 34 or 33, and you're actually know where you're going to go with it, and what the outcome was going to look like. So got through it. Got through it, and started 3 months ago. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Lots of learning, lots of, kind of leaving an industry that inside and out. You're well established and very steady, healthy income, and you've built up a reputation for yourself in that, and then quitting to go do something else. And there was 9 or 10 months of not having an income, which is music to Shauna's ears. But both of us could see the long-term potential and the long-term benefits that, it's okay. It's a sacrifice up front, and it's a bit of a setback like everything, but in the long term, it's going to be far more beneficial, and we just have to stick to the plan.
I love that, because one of the things that has stood out, David, when you were talking the whole way through, is that you both had a plan. Even when COVID hit and you got over and your stuff was robbed, and you just kept saying, okay, let's focus, starting the new job, then with the accident, all of that things, just keep focusing. This is what we want our life to look like. And this is what we would hope to have, the work-life balance. I may have one of those Lamborghinis myself in my front yard in years to come, having a lovely home, family. And it's not just living to work. It's finding what works for you. And even if you love something, and that's a really important point that you made, even if you love something like working for Lamborghini and working in the industry that you've dreamed of and love doing, working with the cars, you don't have to think about it. You love the relational side with your clients, but something else sparked that little interest where you created the change. And even though there was a little bit of off plan, it brought you to a place now where you're relearning who David Ryan can be.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing?
Challenging yourself.
Absolutely, that we can change at any time, and we can relearn how to be. But you're using again all of the skills you've already acquired from going back to your family background, to the foundation they gave you, working on the farm, really realizing that sometimes you have to put in a lot of hard work, but the rewards are there to be reaped later on. And you've kind of done that now. I think you've laid the foundation, David, for the rest of your lives. So I just think absolutely congratulations to you and to Shauna for creating that life for both of you, and that knowing going forward that even if things do get a little bit rocky, they can't get any rockier than you've been through already.
Yeah, I'd be surprised. There's always a few curveballs thrown our way, but you just kind of build up a resilience, and that if you stick to the plan, you get back on track eventually, and those setbacks seem minor, and if you've had a hard week or a hard month in 2 or 3 years' time, you're not even going to remember it. Just keep going is kind of key. So we're still in the thick of it, relatively new to the career, and you're self-employed. You don't get paid unless you bring in some business. So there's still a lot of mountain to climb, but we're getting there. But you just have to put in the time and keep being active and keep working on it. And eventually you get to that level of you're established again in a new industry, and you're known, you get referrals, and you build up your book of business more and more and more. And after time, then it kind of, it's not as much of it. It's always going to be, you put in, you get out what you put in. But definitely in the early days, there's definitely a lot of moving parts to try and figure out. But look, if you're not challenging yourself, you're you're missing out sometimes.
Absolutely, and always learning about yourself. David, has been an absolute pleasure chatting to
Thank
you.
you, Sharon.
Just lovely, and I just love to hear your story because it is very inspiring. And I think people that are listening and thinking about traveling and worrying about what could go wrong, lots of things can go wrong anywhere. But again, it's
Yeah,
focusing on where you want to be, what you want your life to look like, and to stay, on track with your plan as much as possible. But again, as David said, you don't know where the road is going to take you. And maybe what you thought was right for you could absolutely change within a few years. So always be open to the opportunities that are presenting
yeah,
themselves to you.
exactly, exactly.
Lovely, David. Thank you so much. So, David, if anybody wants to contact you, David Ryan Mortgages at outlook.com, if they want to
Yeah.
find out about mortgages in Canada, because would you believe it? And I'm not sure if these numbers are correct, but there's over 1,230,000 Canadians of Irish descent in
Yeah,
Canada.
yeah.
And I just thought that is amazing. And one of the things that I saw recently, David, was there's a site here called folklore.ie, but it's about
Mm,
people in Newfoundland,
yes.
and they are just more Irish than we are in Canada. And I
I've
was
been watching a lot
amazed.
of their videos. Yeah,
Yeah, it's amazing. So there's this really strong connection between Canada and Ireland, isn't there?
there is. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Newfoundland. I'm watching a lot of the videos of people from there, and they sound,
Yeah, just
very Irish. Yeah,
more Irish.
yeah. But yeah, that's how people can reach out to me because that's the big thing that I'm working on at the moment is trying to look after my own over here when it comes
Yeah.
to the mortgage world. And some people I find that move over might think, we're going home in 4 years or 3 or 4 years or 5 years. There's no point, getting on the property ladder.
Mm,
Definitely is because you can build equity over here. Property is kind of, and that's what I learned from my other position is all those people have done very well. It's all been property related, whether it be real estate, mortgages, development, construction, all that. It's all kind of tied to the property world, and values over 5 years always kind of go up.
mm,
So it's kind of like even if you're not coming over here for the long term, is what I'm talking to a lot of people about. Is it's still always good to look at seeing what would it look like to buy your own apartment and not pay the rent,
mm.
because if you do move home, you can always sell it and you can take, if you build up 100, 150 grand worth of equity, which is very, very common over here, then you have a nice chunk of money to bring home with you to put as a down payment on a house in Ireland if you were to move home. Or things change. People come for 3 years, stay for 8 years, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, thank God we bought a place after
Yeah.
3 or 4 years because we didn't realize we want to stay for another how many years. Um, so yeah, I have been doing a lot of reach outs to the Irish community and just having chats with people about some people that were never thinking about it, just saying to them, well, this is what it would look like. We can kind of do pre-approvals based off their income and stuff to see what they would be eligible for. And if that's something within the budget that they don't mind spending, then it's by all means definitely worth looking at.
Mm. I love that because it is something that probably people do think about. Well, I'm only going for a few years. So I think you might have planted a little seed, David, for many people listening to this, which is lovely. I wish you all the best for the future in everything that
Thank
you
you.
do, David. I'll be keeping
Thank
an
you,
eye on
Sharon.
you. And I know you're on LinkedIn as well. So if
Yeah,
anybody wants to connect with David through LinkedIn or through his outlook.com as well,
yeah.
I
Or
will be.
Instagram, you can get me David dot mortgages and motors.
David dot mortgages and motors. Lovely.
Yeah.
Thank you, David. Thank you so much for your time. I know it's
No
early
problem,
over
Sharon. Thank you
there,
very much.
and we'll be following you and watching where your dream unfolds in the future. So thank you so much,
Thank you.
David.
Fingers crossed.
Absolutely. So thank you to everyone for listening. And as I said, I'll put all of the information about David in the show notes. And until we connect again, take care of yourself.